I am an only child from a first-tier city, raised in a well-off family. My parents spared no expense in my upbringing, but they forgot to teach me about the darker sides of human nature. A wrong marriage almost ruined my entire family. I met Michael in college. He always chose the cheapest meals in the cafeteria. But I liked him, not just for his looks. He had a unique scholarly aura, always speaking gently and never losing his temper.
Michael, let's talk about our future. Graduation is coming, and we should plan for our marriage.
Emily, I don't think your parents will approve of me. They might look down on me because of my background.
Don't worry, Michael. I'll stand by you, no matter what they say. Trust me.
After much persuasion, Michael reluctantly agreed to meet my parents.
Here, Michael. I bought some new clothes and gifts for you to present to my parents. It'll make a good impression.
Emily, I prefer to wear my usual clothes. It's more honest.
Dressing nicely for the first meeting shows respect for my parents. You're being too dismissive.
Sensing my genuine anger, he reluctantly changed into the new clothes I bought for him. The outcome of the meeting was predictable. Although my parents were polite, it was clear they didn't approve of Michael. I also learned that Michael's father had passed away and that he had 3 sisters.
Jessica, Michael has 3 sisters. It's a bit overwhelming.
Emily, break up with him. His family must have been desperate for a boy. This family clearly favors sons over daughters. And don't you think Michael is looking for financial security?
Jessica's words upset me. I had seen how well Michael treated me over the years. He was genuinely good to me. After graduation, I lied to my parents about going on a trip and followed Michael to his hometown without hesitation. We went straight to the County Civil Affairs Bureau to get our marriage certificate before even entering his house.
Emily, you're different from those materialistic girls who demand dowries. I will make you happy.
I believed him until the moment I stepped into Michael's home. I never imagined that in the 21st century, such poverty still existed. His house had only 3 rooms, one used as a living room, cluttered with old furniture and an ancient TV, with leftovers on the dining table surrounded by flies.
Michael, how can people live like this?
Emily, this is my home. If you truly love me, you'll accept it.
His mother, a typical rural woman, was only in her early 50s but looked older than my 70-something grandmother due to frequent childbirth and hard labor. At that time, I felt sorry for her, having spent her life bearing and raising children without enjoying a single day of comfort. I vowed to be a good daughter-in-law to her. The neighbors praised me for being educated and beautiful, and they praised Michael for marrying a wife without spending a penny. Looking back, I realize how foolish I was. I was being taken advantage of without even realizing it. After 2 days at Michael's house, I couldn't take it anymore. The mosquito bites, the unfamiliar food, and most of all, the outhouse. I won't go into details, but just thinking about it still makes me nauseous.
Michael, can we stay at a hotel in the county? I can't stand it here anymore.
I grew up here. If you truly love me, you have to love everything about me.
I was stunned at that moment. If I didn't love him, why would I marry him?
I love you. I married you, didn't I? If we can't stay at a hotel, can you at least accompany me to the county for a walk?
At that moment, Linda suddenly pushed the door open.
If Emily wants to go for a walk, take her. She doesn't like the food at home, so take her to eat something good.
Saying this, she pulled out a handful of loose change from her pocket and handed it to me.
No, thank you, I can't.
She was strong, and I couldn't push her away.
Is it not enough? I can borrow some from Uncle Jack next door.
At this point, what else could I do? I had to accept the handful of loose change. On the way to the county, Michael kept a sullen face and didn't speak to me.
What's wrong, Michael?
My mom worked so hard to put me through school. How could you ask her for money? Do you know how difficult it was for her to save that money?
He lost his temper on the street, leaving me embarrassed as people passed by. I kept crying and apologizing.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
My mom has had a hard life. Don't do that again.
He brainwashed me like this, manipulating me, so that for a long time, whenever I had a disagreement with his mom, I would remember how hard her life was and endure it. After accepting the money, I went out of my way to please Michael by buying his mom new clothes, shoes, skincare products, and even an electric bike that Michael said she liked but couldn't afford. At his suggestion, I even bought gifts for his 3 unseen sisters, spending nearly $5,000 in total. When we returned, the neighbors were envious, and his mom couldn't stop praising me for being considerate. His mom was happy, and Michael was happy too. As a reward, he agreed to take me to stay at a hotel in the county and promised to look for a job in the provincial capital in a few days. Meanwhile, I was lying to my family, making them think I was on a trip. Worried that I might run out of money, they transferred more to me, most of which ended up supplementing Michael and his mom. This was just the beginning. When we left Michael's hometown to find work in the provincial capital, I gradually realized that I might have fallen in love not with the real Michael but with a man I had imagined. It was hard to find a job in our field. Michael refused to accept reality and insisted on finding a job in our field, with unrealistic expectations about salary and benefits. No matter how I tried to persuade him, he wouldn't face reality. He spent every day running around job fairs, only to return disappointed each time. I used to like that Michael didn't lose his temper, but now I realized how terrifying it was for a man to refuse to communicate and only give me the cold shoulder. Whenever I said a word too many, he would look at me with cold eyes, as if I were his enemy. In the small room in the urban village, I lost count of how many times I cried. As time passed, Michael spent over 3 months looking for a job without any success. He became increasingly gloomy, often ignoring me for entire days. My parents began to suspect something and said they had arranged a job for me, urging me to return quickly. After another argument with him, I decided to go home. But just then, I discovered I was expecting a child. Narrator, tone, sad looking back, I realize how foolish I was. I was being taken advantage of without even realizing it.
Emily, tone, sad Michael, I can't take it anymore. The mosquito bites, the unfamiliar food, and most of all, the outhouse. I can't stand it.
Michael, tone, serious, I grew up here. If you truly love me, you have to love everything about me.
After 2 days at Michael's house, people came to see me every day, commenting on me as if I were an object Michael brought home. I begged Michael to stay at a hotel in the county, but he coldly pushed my hand away. Emily sat on the bed, reflecting on the past events. She felt a surge of emotions, realizing how naive she had been.
I can't believe I let them treat me this way. I was so blind.
She remembered the 2 dreadful days she spent at Michael's house, feeling like a stranger in a strange land.
The mosquito bites, the unfamiliar food, and that outhouse. It was unbearable.
I remember seeing on the news that some expectant mothers used certain medications, resulting in their children being born with ambiguous genitalia, facing a tragedy that wasn't theirs to bear. And I had unknowingly taken such medication for so long. I couldn't imagine what I would do if my child had issues. I would be devastated.
What if my child has issues? What will I do?
My legs went weak, and I slowly slid to the floor, clutching the shoe cabinet, my abdomen cramping. Linda was still boasting about her skills. I used all my strength to dial 911, then called my mom before falling into darkness. When I woke up, the baby was already born, a daughter. But since she was only 35 weeks old, she wasn't fully developed, weighing just 2,100 grams. She had to stay in the hospital's incubator until she reached 2,500 grams to be discharged.
It's a blessing in disguise. The medication hadn't affected her, and my daughter is healthy.
Knowing the baby was fine, I silently breathed a sigh of relief and decided not to tell my parents about the medication for now. After all, the baby was fine, so why worry them unnecessarily? And since the baby was born, as agreed, Linda would go back after the baby's first month. I thought avoiding more trouble would be better, but my cowardice almost harmed my daughter again.
I need to breastfeed her to ensure she grows strong.
Using a breast pump was excruciating, and the pain from the C-section made sitting up a torment. My mom cried countless times, and even my dad's eyes turned red. Linda, of course, didn't care about me. Whenever my parents weren't around, she would complain to the nanny about how my carelessness caused the early birth, costing more money and making the baby suffer.
Don't take it to heart, Emily. Getting angry during the postpartum period could lead to long-term health issues.
Perhaps due to my bad mood, I experienced a blocked milk duct. The nanny massaged and applied heat, while Linda insinuated that I was being overly dramatic. In front of other mothers and family members in the ward, she even suggested that Michael should help relieve the blockage.
I was utterly humiliated and burst into tears. To Linda, I wasn't a person but a breeding and milk-producing animal.
For the first time, I lost my temper in public, hysterically demanding Linda leave and telling Michael I didn't need her care.
Leave, Linda! I don't need your care!
I'm sorry, Emily. I'll take my mom home.
Michael took his mom back home, and with the nanny's comfort, I gradually calmed down. Michael apologized when he returned, and the matter was left unresolved. The real explosion happened after I was discharged. A week after the C-section, I could leave the hospital, and my daughter had reached the discharge weight, though she had some physiological jaundice. The doctor said it would fade with sunlight exposure.
Holding my daughter as we left the hospital, I thought it was the beginning of happiness.
Back home, Linda indeed behaved much better, staying out of my room and only helping when the nanny bathed or changed the baby. One day, the nanny, looking very upset, came to me and said Linda had been secretly feeding the baby herbal water.
Despite my repeated warnings, Linda pretended not to understand. What scared me was that she had intentionally distracted me and dropped the baby into the bath. If I hadn't been vigilant, your daughter might have been seriously harmed.
Ignoring the pain and itchiness of my wound, I rushed out to confront Linda.
Are you trying to harm my daughter? What did you feed her? Isn't it enough that you secretly gave me that medication? Now you want to harm my daughter too. What did I ever do to you? If you have a problem, take it out on me.
My parents happened to be there and were stunned to hear about the medication.
What medication? Emily, what are you talking about? I gave the baby mugwort water to treat her jaundice. I'm her grandmother. How could I harm my own granddaughter?
I couldn't believe she denied everything so blatantly, leaving me speechless with anger.
Emily, who told you that? I may be uneducated, but I know right from wrong. If you don't want me here, I'll leave. You're still in your postpartum period. Don't get angry. It's a lifelong issue.
If I hadn't experienced her tactics firsthand, I might have believed she was innocent. After drinking some water and calming down, I explained why I had an early birth and what I overheard on the phone.
Did you really give my daughter that medication?
I gave her medication to protect the pregnancy.
Let's test the medication she took.
Only then did Linda break down, admitting she had given me the medication, arguing it was because I said I only wanted one child and she couldn't let the family line end.
Mother-in-law, everyone loves their own child. I was against their marriage from the start. Let's have them divorce, and you can find someone willing to continue your family line. Let's not waste each other's time.
Linda tried to argue, but my dad didn't give her a chance, calling Michael back home.
Dad, Mom, I won't divorce. I love Emily and our child.
Linda sat on the floor, crying and accusing Michael of being unfilial, saying she couldn't face her ancestors without a son. The house was in chaos, and my mom had already packed our things, ready to take me and the baby home. I realized how naive I had been. I was being manipulated without even noticing.
The days at Michael's house felt like an eternity. He mosquito bites, unfamiliar food, and worst of all, the outhouse. Just thinking about it still makes me queasy.
People came to see me every day as if I were an exotic animal, commenting on me in their local dialect as though I was an object Michael had brought home.
Michael, I can't take this anymore. Can we please stay at a hotel in the county?
I grew up here. If you truly love me, you have to love everything about my life.
That evening, Michael came to the hospital to relieve Linda. Seeing Michael's exhausted look, Linda softened and asked him what he planned to do.
Michael, what are we going to do?
Michael cried. It was the first time I had seen him break down like this since I met him.
I have no choice. That's my mother. I can't let her spend the rest of her life in pain. I would do anything to get her treated.
Once he calmed down, Sarah said she could help him raise the medical expenses, but it would be a loan, not a gift, and he would have to write an IOU.
We can help with the expenses, but it will be a loan. You'll have to write an IOU.
When Sarah said this, both Michael and I were stunned. We had always assumed that what my parents had was mine.
Mom, we're all family. There's no need for an IOU, right?
Even families should keep clear accounts to give us some pressure.
Michael nodded and agreed to write the IOU.
Honestly, I felt a bit uncomfortable at that moment.
On the way home, I complained that she shouldn't be so harsh on Michael.
Mom, you shouldn't be so harsh on Michael.
You never truly know someone's heart, and it's better to be cautious.
The next morning, Sarah went to the hospital and I went home with the baby. When I opened the door, I couldn't believe my eyes. The shoe cabinet at the entrance was a mess, and my shoes were scattered all over the floor. The TV was on, the coffee table in the living room was piled with snacks, the trash can was overflowing, and the floor was littered with snack crumbs and some strange-colored liquid. Michael's nephew was lying on the sofa with his shoes on, playing on a tablet, and didn't even greet me when he saw me come in with the baby. In the bedroom, Linda and his 3 unseen sisters were rummaging through my wardrobe. The wardrobe was in disarray, and the bed was covered with clothes. The first sister was wearing my pajamas.
That's my necklace. Please return it to me, and please stop touching my things.
So what? I practically raised Michael. Now that he's successful, why can't I take a little something?
This is my stuff, bought with my own money. What you're doing is stealing.
What do you mean your money? You don't even have a job. Isn't it my brother's money?
What a bunch of unreasonable people.
Then go ask Michael how much he earns in a month and how much my necklace costs. Do you really think he's that capable?
As luck would have it, Michael walked in just then. The room was tense, and Michael immediately understood what was happening. He looked exhausted and, whether he heard my harsh words or not, his face was grim.
Mom, first sister, second sister, third sister, please don't touch Emily's things.
That one sentence caused an uproar.
Mom said Michael has forgotten his mother now that he has a wife, and I didn't believe it. Mom treated you like her precious, and we sisters always gave in to you. We gave you the best food, carried you when we went out, and let you study while we didn't. Without Mom and us, could you have the good life you have now? Do you have any conscience?
Linda tried to mediate, but every word she said was an accusation against me.
Stop arguing. I'm old and have been sick all my life. Forget it. Let Michael live his life. He's had it hard. Let's go back. I won't get treated. It's my fate to suffer.
Their loud voices scared the baby into crying. I was never good at arguing, and now I was so angry that my chest hurt.
Stop arguing. You're scaring the child.
Just a girl, so what if she's scared? What's so special about her?
First sister, you're a woman too.
So what if I'm a woman? I'm not delicate.
Enough, everyone stop. First sister, put Emily's things down and clean up. I took the day off. Let's go out for breakfast and then take Mom to the hospital.
Reluctantly, they changed clothes, threw my things haphazardly on the bed, and left, leaving behind a mess and the nephew who only cared about his games. After 2 days at Michael's house, I couldn't take it anymore. The mosquito bites, the unfamiliar food, and most of all, the outhouse. I won't go into details, but just thinking about it still makes me nauseous.
Michael, I can't stand it anymore. Can we please stay at a hotel?
Michael coldly pushed my hand away.
I grew up here. If you truly love me, you have to love everything about me.
Emily sat across from Michael, the tension in the room palpable.
Michael, I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce.
What are you talking about? You can't just throw everything away.
Michael's eyes flashed with anger, but there was a hint of desperation too.
I've seen the surveillance footage, Michael. I know about the other woman.
You're overreacting. It's not what you think.
Emily felt a mix of anger and disappointment.
Stop lying! I heard everything. How could you do this to me?
Emily, please, let's talk this through. We can work it out.
There's nothing left to talk about. Sign the papers.
Looking back, I realize how foolish I was. Michael had been taking advantage of me, and I didn't even see it. After 2 days at Michael's house, I couldn't take it anymore. The mosquito bites, the unfamiliar food, and most of all, the outhouse. Even now, just thinking about it makes me nauseous. Moreover, people came to see me every day as if I were some sort of exotic animal, commenting on me in their dialect as if I were an object Michael brought home.
Michael, I can't stand it anymore. Can we please stay at a hotel in the county?
I grew up here. If you truly love me, you have to love everything about me.
Looking back, I realize how foolish I was. I was being taken advantage of without even realizing it. After 2 days at Michael's house, I couldn't take it anymore. The mosquito bites, the unfamiliar food, and most of all, the outhouse. Just thinking about it still makes me nauseous. Moreover, people came to see me every day as if I were a panda, commenting on me in their dialect as if I were an object Michael brought home. After 2 days, I couldn't stand it anymore and begged Michael to stay at a hotel in the county.
Michael, please, can we stay at a hotel? I can't bear this any longer.
I grew up here. If you truly love me, you have to love everything about me.